In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to paint this pretty Siberian iris with watercolour, so let's get into it. I'm using this cold press block from, this is from Etcher, and I'll talk to you about all the materials that I'm going to be using as we work through this tutorial. And you'll notice that I've drawn my iris before we start painting. And if you don't like drawing or you feel that you can't, don't worry, because we'll give you a free reference photograph and line drawing to trace down from, and I'll tell you later how you can obtain them. I really felt that this needed a background, so to begin with I'm working wet in wet, which means that I'm just adding water to the paper like this, being careful, taking great care not to apply the water where I don't want the paint to go. The mixes that I have on my palette are by Daniel Smith. The purple tone that you see is Amethyst Genuine, and that's from their Primatech range. And the other colour, which is a really dark, vibrant green, which is Undersea Green. Once the water has had a chance to settle into the paper, I'm just simply dropping in that paint, just here and there, as you can see, no sort of pattern, just randomly dropping it in around the outline of the iris, and you'll notice that the paint just drops where I've applied the water. This wet in wet technique is perfect for painting backgrounds, and it also means, because I'm using a granulating colour, this also means that the colours will separate slightly on the paper and give it that lovely sort of watercolour effect that we love so much. You can see that I'm dropping in one colour on top of the other colour, and because these are granulating colours, you can see them separating slightly on my paper. I'll continue this process until it's all around, until I've finished the background, dropping it in here and there. As the paint settles, you'll notice that I'm using the tip of my brush to gently push that paint into the outline as it's drying. When watercolour dries, it retracts very slightly away from the paper, and I'm using this opportunity to just gently push it against the pencil line so that we have a nice, neat edge to work with. Working on small sections at a time like this means that you have better control, and if you're new to watercolour painting, I highly recommend that you watch this video all the way through, because you can see that kind of tricky process unfold. We call it so lovingly the ugly duckling stage, and it happens with watercolour because we can often think that our painting looks wrong, whereas in fact it's all part of the process. Once again, just continuing bit by bit, working on the other side as I work through. I'll continue this process until all of the outline is complete and we have the first wash of the background in place. All of the materials that I'm going to be using today I will list in the description box underneath this video, so don't worry if you haven't seen the colours that I'm using, everything will be there so that you can take a look later on. Brushes that I'm using today are a number 6, a number 3 and a number 1 round, and they are synthetic. The background is now dry, so I'm starting to think about the colours that I'm going to use on the iris. I've mixed a couple of puddles here of cadmium yellow pale and applying it to the areas like this, as you can see. Remember, these are just our initial washes and they will need to be built on later. We can also add a bit more colour to the background a little bit later on. Just adding this yellow colour where I feel it's needed and blending it in with my brush. So next up I'm using, this is a lavender colour, and I'm applying it like this with my number 1 size round brush in the areas that I feel have a sort of really bright lavender blue tone like this. If you don't have any of the colours that I'm using today and you want to join in and you're struggling to match your colours, do let me know in the comments and I will do my best to help you. This colour that you see me mixed here is a very watery mix of indigo with a smidgen of olive green to create this lovely sort of bluey green tone, and we're back to the lavender just to give our first wash on these little petals here. So here I have a mixture of cadmium lemon pale with a tiny bit of olive, and now I'm adding a little bit of sap just to create a bit of variation in the green on the leaves, as you can see. Now, at the start of this video, I mentioned that we supply you with a free reference photograph, and a really simple line drawing to trace down from if you want to join in. And there are a couple of ways that you can obtain them, so let's just take a look. We have a couple of ways that you can access our free reference photographs and line drawings. We have our very own private Facebook group, and as a member you can access all of them here. There is another way, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. And in case you're not a Facebook fan, and I know it's not for everybody, I just want to reassure you that our group is really friendly, really helpful and informative, and you can also post up your finished paintings and have feedback from me and our other group members. You can see here some of the completed works in the student gallery. Having positive feedback from your paintings is a great way to learn and a really amazing confidence booster. If this is something that interests you, I'll put a link to the Facebook group in the description underneath this video. But if Facebook really isn't for you, then don't worry, because I'll put a screenshot of the line drawing and the reference photograph right at the end of this video, so be sure to stay right until the end and you can print it off that way. This is a mixture of sap green that you can see me adding here, just dropping it into the already wet wash and now applying the darker value on the other stem like this. At this point the paper is dry. I'm just mixing indigo with a tiny bit of the amethyst and just dropping this in, as you can see here, to start creating the initial washes of our veins and some shape and some form as I work through like this. At this point, I'm not paying too much attention to my tonal values. I just want to get these washes in place so that when it comes to applying the darker tones later on, it really is a breeze. Now this painting isn't strictly botanical because it has a background. I just felt I wanted to add that because it really gave it a boost and a pop of colour. And we all love painting a background, don't we? So if botanical painting is your thing and you really want to level up, then we do have a Patreon where every month we have full-length botanical painting tutorials that you won't find here on YouTube. So let's just take a look. If you love botanical painting and want to know more, then head over to our Patreon. We have different membership tiers so that you can take your botanical painting to the next level. Every month we launch a brand new painting tutorial covering all things botanical to help you grow. The tutorials are exclusive to Patreon and are ad-free, so if you want to paint like this, then take a look. Link in description. So if that's something that interests you, then do take a look and I will link it in the description box underneath this video so that you can join us over on Patreon, and it's also a way that you can support my channel. So all I'm doing here is a watery mix of that blue tone, doesn't matter which one, as long as it's that kind of very, very light, subtle shade, to just apply the beginnings of these veins. So if you are new here, just to let you know that we do launch brand new videos on YouTube every single Tuesday. So if you are new, just say hi in the comments. I'd love to meet you. And you may want to consider subscribing and hitting that little bell notification. That way you won't miss any new content when we release it every single week. This is a mixture of indigo and the amethyst that we mixed earlier, and I'm just using a really light touch to apply the beginnings of the pattern that we can see on the iris like this. These will need to be built on later on, but for now I just wanted to get them in place so that I know where I'm going later on when I apply the darker values. I'm paying close attention to my reference photograph that I kept in screen for you, and I'm sort of just applying these colours where I feel they are needed, and as I said, I can build them up later on. If you are enjoying this video, you may want to give me a thumbs up, a big like. It's a way of letting YouTube know that you're enjoying my content, and it means more people can see it and help my channel grow. I'd really appreciate it if you could do that. This is my flat synthetic brush and I'm using it damp just to tidy up a few of the edges. and adding a little bit more indigo with a tiny bit of that amethyst that we put at the beginning. Amethyst colour that I used here is from the Primatech range from Daniel Smith. These are a stunning range of colours. I have got a couple of them in my kit that I use from time to time, and mixed with this undersea green, which is a granulating colour, I think they work really well together as a background and make this iris stand out. So if you have got those two colours, do use them, and if not, you can use whatever background you like, or of course you can leave it completely blank. We have done a similar video to this a few weeks ago here on YouTube where we painted the daisy using a similar technique. So as you can see here on your screen, and if you'd like to take a look at that, I will link it in the description box so that you can check that out after you've watched this video. I'm mixing, this is a mixture of the green tones, so we have indigo with a tiny bit of olive green, and I'm just using what's left on my brush to start creating a few patterns here and there. So this is a darker value, making sure that everything's dry at this point, and I'm just adding a few details where I feel it's necessary. I'm mixing up these two colours again. Now that the colours are dry, I feel that we need to tidy up the background a little bit. So using exactly the same process as before, by wetting the paper first of all and working wet in wet, and just dropping in these two colours as I did at the start. When watercolour dries, it invariably dries a lot lighter, so I did feel that this needed another few washes here and there, particularly where the iris meets the paper, and I feel that it needed sharpening up a little bit, so this is a really good way to do that. You don't have to put this everywhere as we did at the start, just around some of the areas that need sharpening up and need enhancing, and this way it will make your painting come to life and stand out from that paper. So just working around the iris like this bit by bit, and you can see that by doing this, it really sharpens up any untidy edges that you may have achieved when you put your first wash on, and it brings it sort of, it gives it some uniformity. I'm going around the outside here just to sharpen up those edges, and I'll continue this process all the way around the iris. Continuing the process, working around the iris like this to sharpen up any untidy edges with my number 1 size round brush. This really makes the iris stand out and pop off the page. Remember to stay right until the end of this video, where you can pause the video and then take a screenshot of the line drawing and reference photographs so that you can print them out, trace them down and join in with this tutorial if you want to. And remember, you can also post up your works in progress as well as your completed paintings on our Facebook group. We love to see them, so do consider joining us there and share your work with us. I'm starting now to build up the veins that I put in earlier on. By having a lighter colour to begin with, it means that I know exactly where I'm going and have more confidence to build up the darker values as I work through. The colour that I'm using here is just a mix of indigo and indigo with a tiny bit of the amethyst that we used earlier on. Just taking this colour down the stem like this and enhancing one or two of the darker values, as you can see me doing here. This is a number 1 size round brush that I'm using to do this. Where we have these tiny little veins on the upper petals, I've added a little bit of water because I didn't want them to be quite as strong in value, so just add a little bit of water if you feel that the colour is too strong. So just continuing the process, working through bit by bit, just enhancing the pieces that I feel are needed. Now that we have those initial patterns in place, we can go over those little dots and little lines, just enhancing those as I work through. So I know roughly where I'm going this time because we've already got that initial wash in place, and just adding a few more details here and there. Just carrying on the process, working through bit by bit. I'm not going strictly to the photograph, I'm just adding a few sort of lines here and there where I feel they are needed. Adding a bit of detail as I work through. Looking at one section at a time and just adding some lines here on this little leaf. And a bit more detail on the bottom. A few little veins here and there. I've added a tiny bit of red to the yellow mix because I did feel that that cadmium yellow pale was a little bit too yellow on its own, so a smidgen of any red colour that you have within your kit if you're joining in with me, or you could use something like an Indian yellow would work just as well in place of the cadmium yellow pale. These are my beloved etcher paints. I haven't used them very often because I don't get the chance, but here I'm using olive. These are metallic paints and they are just beautiful. I'm going to paint an outline around this because I felt that it needed something to kind of unify it and bring it all together. If you have got these paints, you'll need to mix them to a thick consistency and apply it in the way that I'm doing here. I'm using my number 3 size round to do this, and you can see that just by keeping my hand nice and steady, I'm painting on this glorious olive metallic colour that really ties in nicely with the colours I've already used. Just working around bit by bit. I just felt this brought the entire painting together, and it ties in nicely with the other daisy painting tutorial that we did. You'll need to keep mixing them up on your palette because this paint does separate, and we're almost done with this tutorial. I'm really delighted with the way this painting turned out. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments below.